All right, what is up, tycoons? What's up, traders? Super excited for today's video. Going to give you guys another update on Palantir. Palantir has exploded after earnings. This was the chart pattern that I basically went over in the last video, and I gave you guys all of the key levels. As you can see, all right, we did come up exactly up here to the top of this supply zone, and we have started pulling back. Supply zones are an imbalance where there's a lot of sell orders, and potentially price can head back lower. All right, we did actually sell up here around this area. All right, we'll dive into this chart a little bit more. We're also going to look into the fundamentals very briefly, all right, and go over some of the fundamentals of Palantir after its earnings. We can take a look, right? And that's going to be done with today's sponsor, Simply Wall Street, which is a really great platform. It dives into the fundamentals for you guys, and it gives you some really nice graphs and charts. That way, if maybe you're not the best at understanding fundamental analysis or really, breaking things down, it compares it to, the market, to the industry standards, to some of its pairs, and, is a really useful platform. So more on them later. Now, we did trade some Palantir after earnings. Okay, so got into these plays after earnings. This isn't even before the big earnings gap up, right? Now, we did have a chart pattern right here, this symmetrical triangle. And I mentioned that if we get a look below and fail, right, that's going to be very bullish because really, when we break this trend line here and when we broke it these 2 days, this was the opportunity for sellers to really come into the market and push things lower below our demand zone here and really try to hit these bearish price targets, right? And what happened was, we came down into demand, right? And we had to look below and fail. And it's significant, okay, because sellers, as I mentioned, had the full opportunity, but didn't take advantage of that opportunity. And bulls were actually in control, right? That's what it shows you guys. And it's a bullish sign. And sure enough, it exploded after earnings and, went much higher. We went above the major levels that we needed to get above to be bullish above there. We did close above there and continue pushing upwards on Palantir. So we're going to dive into everything a little bit more. Right, as you can see, we got over 100% on both of these plays. This one ended up going up about 150%. So really great trades. This one in this was at 10:11 and by 10:28. So in 17 minutes, it already ran up 83%. Is a really great play. All right. If you guys want to join the Discord, the link to join is in the description below. Use code Zachley, Zachly, all lowercase. That'll get you a discount on your membership. Now, full disclaimer, the content provided in this YouTube channel is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to be relied upon as legal, financial, or investment advice. Myself and any individuals that appear in this channel are not registered financial advisors or brokers. Trading in stocks, bonds, commodities, and crypto involve a significant risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. So be sure to read through that full disclosure. Now, here we're back at the chart, okay? And really, we need to stay above this level right here, $9.12. Now, the reason being is because these are the three Fibonacci retracement levels, right? And you use these to identify trend continuation versus trend reversal because nothing moves in a straight line down and nothing moves in a straight line up, right? And so we had this big downtrend that we started here and we came up and we retraced and we got near that $9.12 level. And then we, continued lower, right? But if you notice, we did not make a low and then a lower low. So we didn't get the trend continuation, right? We really were just consolidating around these levels, forming this triangle pattern here. And then, of course, we got the explosion there. Now, as I mentioned, you use them to look for that trend continuation, right? So move down, retracement, and then a trend continuation would have taken us to those bearish price targets. But you can also use these to spot reversals, right? So if you move down, you retrace, and you start to consolidate a little and break through those retracement levels, that's how you can spot a potential upside reversal. Now, we weren't able to put in a new high, right? We put in a high and essentially an equal high here, but we were not able to come up and hit the bullish price targets above the supply zone of 1064. That was really going to be the area we were targeting if we were going to be able to break out past this supply zone. But for now, these were our major resistance levels that we needed to get above. We did get above them. We've closed above them for the past 3 or 4 days. And so now if we do come back down, ultimately we want to try to hold these levels, right? And, get a break, retest, and possibly push back higher. If we end up breaking through these, right, you need to be very mindful that Palantir has a huge gap down now, right? If we draw in a box right here, you can see that there's a huge gap in between these two candlesticks on, after reporting its earnings. Now, these gaps, they tend to fill about 90% of the time. The big question is, when are they going to fill, right? Sometimes they fill very quickly. Sometimes they fill in days. Sometimes it takes months or years to fill, right? A really good example is if you look at its last earnings, right? We had a big gap up as well. Okay. And then we had two bullish days, about 2 or 3 bullish days. And you can see that, every time we gap up on the earnings, we come up into the supply zone here, and then we end up pulling back down back into the gap, right? So you need to be very mindful of that, okay? We have 912, we also have 875, and we also have 838. Those are going to be the big support levels now that we really need to hold. Otherwise, there's a good chance that we come back down and fill that gap. So do be mindful of that, okay? You got to be very cautious and pay close attention to it, especially if you're trying to go long after buying the stock when it already jumped up massively. It was at $7 almost, and then jumped all the way up here to $10.30. So really, really big move. Be cautious of those gaps down. Be mindful of those. All right. Let's dive into the fundamentals a little bit. The earnings are forecast to grow 61.67% per year, and the earnings have grown 7.4% per year over the past 5 years. Now, one thing that you need to pay attention to from a risks point of view is that shareholders have been diluted in the past year. So keep that in mind if you guys are trying to invest in Palantir, right? There's not only good things, but there are some things you need to be cautious of. If we dive a little bit further and you take a look at the valuation after earnings, okay, it gets a 2 out of 6 on the valuation score, right? The two things that it gets a check on is the price to sales versus the peers and price to sales versus its fair ratio. But all of the others, it does not get a good check there on, it gets an X on the valuation, right? The price to sales versus the industry, below fair value, basically meaning like, is it below fair value? Is it significantly below fair value? And the different analyst forecasts, it does get X's there. Now, Palantir is pretty volatile. This right here is the average market volatility in the middle, and then you can see the industry volatility, and Palantir is above both the average market volatility and the average industry volatility. It does have a 0% debt to equity ratio. It's got no debt right now. So that's something that a lot of people do like about it. And, that gives it a good score on the financial health, right? It gets 6 out of 6. When you look at the short-term liabilities, long-term liabilities, it's debt level, reducing debt, it's got stable cash runway, forecast cash runway. So, it does look good, from a financial health standpoint. And if we dive a little bit further, right? So we talked about the valuation here. When you click on these, right, it'll go more in depth on the Simply Wall Street platform. Remember, that's today's sponsor. There's a link in the description or a pinned comment below. You guys can get a 14-day trial to look up Palantir, dive deeper into Palantir, or you can search your favorite stock or maybe a stock that you're thinking of investing in and dive a little deeper onto the fundamentals. Not only if you use my link will you get a 14-day free trial, but the first 100 people to join will get up to a 40% discount. Now, this is the price to sales ratio versus its peers, and we can see the peer average here at 8.9, and Palantir is at 8.6. So it is currently below the peer average. All right. We've got 61.7% earnings growth rate with a 62.7% EPS growth rate. And then we take a look here at the price to sales ratio versus its fair ratio. And right now it's at 8.6, and a fair price to sales ratio would be 8.9. So Palantir is a good value based on its price to sales ratio compared to the estimated price to sales ratio. Now, its past performance, okay, we can take a look here, and it doesn't get any good check marks here, right? When it talks about some of the earnings, growing the profit margin, is accelerating growth, earnings versus industry, and high ROE. You can dive in a little bit deeper into the platform, but all of those do not get a check on those. So, there are some good things. There are some things you need to, be a little bit concerned about or be mindful of from a risk analysis perspective. If you take a look at the chart, remember there's that gap down. Not saying that gap down has to fill anytime soon, but if we repeat the pattern that it did on its last earnings, there is that potential that Palantir drops back down to fill that gap over the next coming weeks. So be mindful of that. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, use that pinned comment down below or the link in the description to join the Simply Wall Street platform.